Hey everyone, welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, we just ask you one teeny tiny little favor. If you can make sure to give us a follow so you can never miss a beat and I could keep on bringing amazing guests like the one I have on today. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Tony, for anyone that may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name's Tony Bradshaw. I'm the author of the Millionaire Choice, host of the Millionaire Choice podcast, founder of the Purpose of Wealth events, where we teach people how to build wealth and learn how to make, manage, and multiply their money with a purpose. Because I believe if you've got more people in the world, good people that is, with money, then you can help make the world a better place. And one of the reasons the world's so screwed up right now is because the wrong people got the money. Wrong people got the money, bro. Wrong people got the money, John. And we got to change that. You want to fix all these problems. You got all these people going hungry. You got these orphans. You got human trafficking. You got organ trafficking. It's because the wrong people got the money, and we need to change that.
I agreed 1,000 trillion%. And before we get into today's conversation, I want to take us back into the time machine a little bit to learn a little bit more about your walk to wealth. Take us back to your childhood. What was money like growing up in your household? What was that idea of abundance? Was it scarce? Was it, limiting beliefs? What was it kind of like growing up? Because you're super passionate about wealth and financial literacy now, but is that something that was kind of instilled in you early on and you kind of cultivated it? Or is it something that you didn't have at all early on and you wanted to help that younger version of you? So what was growing up like in your household?
Yeah, kids are really interesting because kids are so resilient. Kids are so full of life, and we really don't know any better because you could be living a terrible life and not really know any better and just think everybody's living the same way you are. And so for me, I wouldn't say we weren't going hungry and stuff. We had food on the table. Sometimes it wasn't that great of food. I would thought going out to eat and eating in luxury would be like crystals. Or sometimes we'd go to Bonanza, this little discount steakhouse. And if we ever got to Red Lobster, man, that was the top shelf for us back then. And those were kind of like highlights for us. But I remember the water getting cut off, the power getting cut off, my dad going out to the water meter to turn the water on so my mom could take a shower using what's called a water key. It's a tool. And eventually he trained me. I got big enough. He trained me how to do it. And I'd go out there and do it without him having to do it. I'd pull the metal lid off the water meter.
Yeah.
And then I turn the water on and then go back in the house for a while. And that works pretty good until they figure it out and then they come and padlock it and then you can't do it anymore, right? So those were kind of the things growing up. We didn't have really nice cars. We didn't have really nice clothes. One time I was wearing at a school pep rally jeans that were probably, 3 years old as a teenager. And you can imagine what you outgrow your pants. You should have thrown them out and they're like 4 inches too short for you. And I didn't think about it, man. I just wore the pants, but some girls made fun of me at the pep rally. And I still remember it, them sitting in the bleachers and I'm walking by and they asked me if it was going to rain today. I was expecting it to rain. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're making fun of my pants. I'm like, oh, okay. So they're saying
the high waters.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I didn't know any better, man. I was just living life. I was a simple kid. I wasn't part of the in crowd. I was kind of like in between the in crowd and in between the nerds. I was kind of like you're right in the middle. And I was making work for my mom. She worked really hard. My mom and dad worked really. There was one point my dad was laid off, and I remember going down to the picket lines and standing around the trash barrel, burning stuff for heat while they're picketing on strike. And then that was a very memorable experience. Then that caused him to have a career change. My mom managed convenience stores, and sometimes she's working 80, 100 hours a week just to help put food on the table. Got robbed. Yeah, she got robbed. I think it was like 6 times by gunpoint. That was like the most dangerous job in Nashville at the time. People coming in late, robbing you, stealing beer, stealing money, stealing whatever. And one story particularly that I remember her coming home, because most of the time she kind of shook it off. But this one time she came home and the thief, the robber, came in and stuck a .357 Magnum barrel on the end of her nose. And so she was literally looking down the barrel of a gun, a .357 Magnum, which would have ended her life. And that one really shook her up. But my mom was tough and hung in there and helped provide for the family, helped me go off to college. But it wasn't until I was out of college, after I went to school, I spent my mom and dad's money like crazy. They pampered me too much. My mom and dad came from bad childhoods, so they overcompensated for my sister and I. And then helped me go through college. They didn't pay for it all, but they paid for a lot of it. And then at 25 is when I kind of woke up financially, because I got my first W-2 out of college and I made $39,000. And I had to look at that W-2 to file my taxes. And I'm like, what in the crap? Where'd all that money go? Because the most I'd made before that was probably like $5,000. And so all of a sudden I went from $5,000 to 39,000, and I was 15 grand in debt, $16,000 in debt. I'm like, wow, like that's terrible. Like I made all that money and I don't have but like $500 in the bank. So I looked at my everything I'd bought that year. I had a car that I financed, a computer that I'd financed. I had a TV that I paid for, a stereo I paid for, really nice set of speakers I paid for, a desk my dad made for me, and a bed that I had made for myself. Bought the mattress, made the bed frame. And that was pretty much it, man. That was pretty much it. And so my car note was only $300 a month. So that's $3,600, $3,600. So that's like 10% of what I made.
Yeah.
And my computer. So that was my wake up moment when I said, wow, like this can never happen again. I have to learn to do something different with my money because obviously I don't know what I need to do. And I started learning. I started what I call get money smart. I had to get out there and start learning something. And for most of us, and it was my case as well, most of the time, the people in our general vicinity, the people we know, our family members, they're really not doing any better with money than we are. So I had to go find a different resource to start learning about money. And of course, this is back in 1995. So there wasn't like the internet, there wasn't like YouTube, and there wasn't like all these other opportunities to go learn. I had to go like literally track this stuff down. And so I went to the bookstore and picked up a bunch of books, picked up a bunch of magazines. Back then, what I typically would do was start subscribing to magazines, like find something I want to learn about and then just subscribe to it. And then you get a new magazine every month at your house and you read that. You do that long enough, you get smart. You learn something. And so that was kind of my journey to go from being broke to being wealthy. And then after I learned a little bit, what I realized, John, was that money is really not that complicated.
Yeah.
It really is. It's pretty simple. There's some principles. There's over 10 million millionaire households in America, and like 40% of the world's millionaires live in the United States. There's a reason for that. One is because the American system of capitalism is the most opportunity-driven system. When you go to any other system in the world, you're looking more at a caste system or a communistic system where everybody gets to live in poverty, right? And or the majority gets to live in poverty. That's not how it is in the U.S. There's really opportunity there for people. Even though the system, I would say, is broken and it could be better. I think it could be much better. Like we said before, the wrong people got the money. If the right people had the money, the system would be even better than it is. But right now, the wrong people have the money. And so the system is still working relatively well in a lot of ways, but I think it could be improved on a lot. But that was my journey. And so I put together what I call a millionaire plan. And that was my plan to be a millionaire by the time I was age 40. So I went from a broke person, broke-minded at age 25 to believing I could be a millionaire at age 40, and I was able to hit that goal.
Amazing. And I think you mentioned a lot of amazing points tonight. You have such an amazing story from growing up, turning on the watershed and the water key, and your mom being robbed at gunpoint, which is multiple times. How casually you said that just goes to show how normalized some of these things that shouldn't be normalized were probably growing up. So it definitely it shows a lot of your character and how you were able to come a lot of that. And you mentioned a point where I think this will be a great segue into today's conversation about our society and the capitalistic society. I feel like what a lot of the things that are plaguing people my age, right? And just people in general is that they think that the evil are rich, like money is evil and things like that. And the idea that if you're wealthy, you're a bad person. And it's like, because you think that getting money is bad, you will forever never have money and you'll forever struggle. And because you're forever struggling, it's easier to say you're a good person because you don't have the money, when in all reality, you're actually a bad person because if you had the money, you would actually be able to make some sort of an impact on the actual world and an actual dent in the world. Not saying you need money to help everyone, but you could definitely amplify your helping if you did have it. And so it's like you're just casually allowing whoever else gets the money to get the money. And then you're going to point the finger at them because you weren't willing to take the money. And so that kind of, it goes back to the idea of money is not simple. I mean, finances is actually more simple. It's not easy, but it's simpler than a lot of people think. So for anyone that doesn't understand money, I think this would be a point to start the conversation. A lot of times we're not taught this in college. We're not taught this in high school. We're freshly thrown into the wolves, whether we graduate and go to college or whether we just go start working right out of high school. Where does one begin to start learning about money? I know you took the magazine route and subscribed to some magazines, started reading some books, but like, where does one begin? Because you can get into learning about real estate and then trading and then index funds and mutual funds and bonds, and there's so many different routes to go down. Where does one begin to start understanding what is these financial system that we're sitting on here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so I would say I answer that question a couple different ways. One of them is, first of all, as a young person, you're a lot younger than I am, you first got to understand that the system is designed to make you a slave. Now, some people don't like it when I use that word, but it is designed that way. It's designed for this money, this system to all flow up to a very few people at the very top, and it's a control power structure. If you want to read a good book, John, you should pick up The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. I advise you to pull it up on audiobook because it's a 20-hour audiobook. And it's like reading an encyclopedia, but it goes back to the kind of the roots of where our financial system came from, who was behind creating it, and how it's controlled and manipulated. And it's a very powerful concept when you read through that. And they meticulously go through lots of details there. But what you got to understand is that system is in place. And you go, why for 100 years have we not been taught financial lessons in school from kindergarten to we're 18 to 12th grade? Because in reality, in my world, if I were to reset the system, I'd start teaching every kindergartner about personal finance, and I'd teach them every year for 12 years. And you would be a financial expert coming out of college. Like not out of college, out of high school. Out of high school, you would be a financial expert because money is that simple. It's not that difficult. And just like we learn about math, English, and science for 12 years, we should be learning about money for 12 years because I'll tell you right now, I took calculus. I studied to be an engineer. I used my calculus for about 6 years after I got out of college. I hadn't used it since. What I have used, though, is all the money principles I've learned since I got out of college. So those money principles will follow a person their entire lives. The other things that you learn in in high school, junior high, elementary school, and college, a lot of it's not even that useful. And so you have to go back to the roots of the education system and go, what are we learning that's really useful for our benefit, for our success? And then you go, why aren't we being taught about money? Now, right now, some people say, oh, they're getting financial education. The government requires Yeah, like one semester. You should get one semester of personal financial education. You should get 12 years of it, right? And that's the thing about getting money smart. Key number 3, I think, in my book is get money smart. And you asked me, how do you get started? What you have to understand is that there's not just a moment in time where you learn about money. Once you start that journey, it becomes a lifetime journey where you're going to learn something new every single year. Money, even though it's not that complicated, has a broad depth. So you need to go in and find and learn different ways to manage money, to multiply. I say learn how to make, manage, and multiply your money, right? So the majority of Americans don't know how to make it real well other than a job. They don't know how to manage it real well. So they're always living paycheck to paycheck, and they have no idea what it means to multiply it. And as Robert Kiyosaki says, if you don't learn how to manage your money will always manage you. And that might be not be Robert. It might be somebody else that said that quote. But and that's true, right? So you're going to be like my dad. I hate to say this, but he's 72 years old working full time, And so it's like, wow, and he'll be 80. If he lives to be 80, he'll be working full time. That's just how he's wired. But also because he never learned how to multiply money. He didn't learn that principle. So where I would start today versus where I started when I was 25, I would first of all find me a group of people who are going in the same direction I want to go. And so I would find a group to plug into. I can recommend 2 right now. I personally don't have a group of my own personal group, like a Facebook group or anything I'm doing. But a guy named Jeremy Newsom, he's a dear friend of mine. He made his first stock transaction when he was 6 years old. And he talked his dad into buying Apple stock after he watched Forrest Gump with his dad and heard Forrest Gump talking about Apple stock. So he talked his dad into buying. They bought $3,000 in Apple stock. This was like 1996. And so now Jeremy has his own group called Real Life Trading, and he teaches people how to do day trading. And he actually has a program that you might be interested in, John, where you can go in and take his course. And if you pass the test after you take his course, he will literally fund a $50,000 trading account for you. And you can even upgrade. So you can first get into that level and then upgrade and go to a $100,000 level and then to a $200,000 level. And you guys can go check that out. That's Jeremy Newsom with 2 R's in Jeremy, Real Life Trading. Another friend of mine that I just got connected with is Dion Pound. I'm working with him on several projects, but he's another guy that does stock investing and trading. And these are great guys to learn from, but they all have their own little communities that you could hop in. And that's the benefit, is because you get the power of reinforcement by hanging out with people that have the same goals, going the same direction that you are. So you're not having to figure it out on your own. In my case, I read magazines, read books, put my own plan together, and then went the journey on my own. But that means you're going to make more mistakes if you do it that way. And you're going to miss opportunities. You're going to make more mistakes and miss opportunities. By joining into a group, you have the opportunity to learn as a whole. Call it like crowdsourced investing mindset or something like that. We're aggregating a lot of different people with the same goals in mind and the same knowledge base. And that's where I would start today if I were starting over.
Yeah, no, that's amazing advice, because it's like the meeting of the minds, right? The mastermind, the two heads, two brains, however you say is always better than one. And getting in that tribe, and sometimes it may not be people that are in chasing the same exact goal, but chasing the idea of financial wealth and financial literacy and financial freedom and all those things is definitely a great idea, because you don't realize it until you get around some people that are really thinking big. But a lot of the goals we set for ourselves, and not in like a comparison kind of way, but when you hear some of these other goals that people have, it just kind of reassures you that, what's out there is out there. And you get into some of these masterminds, it's just kind of like a instant confidence boost. It's like you get confidence on steroids, because everyone around you is on a similar journey. They're all trying to self-improve and grow and keep on going up in their life. And it also allows you a place where you can have conversations that you most likely wouldn't have with, for lack of a better way to put it, the vast majority of the population. And I kind of want to cycle back a little bit too. You mentioned too about how our system is kind of pretty much created to keep the money going to the top, right? And when you hear things like that, it makes it seem like the odds are all stacked in our favor. I mean, against us, not in the favor of others. And for me, what I've been realizing is that despite that, you still have the opportunity to do so. And then getting in these groups of people masterminding allows you to see that firsthand. Because a lot of the time you get in these masterminds, some people, of course, are already there. They're super successful already. And then there's other guys that are kind of still on the way there and might be maybe like a step or two ahead of you. And they're still on the same track, and they kind of might have a similar upbringing. And it's like, you see them and it's like, oh, wow. So they kind of started from nothing and they're getting it going too. And it just reassures you that, as I said, that you're on the right track. And despite whatever victim mentality BS that someone wants to, use as an excuse for why they're not successful and why they're not accomplished what they want to, they can get into one of these groups and get that motivation and fuel to get going. So let me ask you, right? You mentioned understanding the financial system a couple times throughout our conversation so far. From your own personal experience, when you were navigating that back at 25, right? You started learning. What was the thing where that point in time where you realized like, hey, the books and stuff that I'm reading isn't just like woo like knowledge and pieces of advice, and it's like actually started to change into your actual reality? At what point did you realize that your life was actually shifting?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of the financial books, I think a lot of books in general, they'll sell you a bunch of principles and a mindset, but no real action. So it's really up to us to put the steps together that create real life change. So make sure when you're learning something new, you figure out how to apply it to your life, right? Don't just take it. If you learn something new and you don't do anything with it, you're not going anywhere. Nothing shifts for you. So for me, what I did is I went from basically spending all my money, being $16,000 in debt. So I made 39 grand, but with 16 grand in debt. That's a $55,000 move in the wrong direction. It only took me about a year to get there, right? It happened fast, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you spend that much money that fast? Well, I was borrowing against my future. That's what a car is, right? A $14,000 car. And then you paying it out over the 5 years in the future. That's your debt. And I got to pay it off, right? Sometimes that's necessary, but it's not ideal. So what I did is I went from spending all that money to going, okay, I hate debt. I don't want to be in debt. Like that was a mindset shift for me. So I'm like, debt's my enemy. I don't want to be part of my debt. So I did what I call it debt demolition, right? I want to destroy my debt before my debt destroys me. A lot of people just keep accruing debt and accruing debt and accruing debt. They don't have any plans. I've seen some people have like 14, 15, 16 different credit cards, all maxed out. Can't figure out where to go next. And they got to dig out of that hole in some way.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, I wasn't that deep. I only had a car and like one credit card. So maybe two credit cards. So $14,000 on the car, about $2,000 in credit cards. And so what I did is I said, okay, here's my debt payoff plan. So instead of spending all my money, I make $3,000 a month roughly. I'm going to take 1,000 instead of living off 3,000. I'm going to live off of 1,000. So I'm going to rein in my expenses a little bit. I'm going to take $1,000 a month, pay off my debt. So it took me about 16 months to pay off my debt. And then I'm going to take $1,000 and invest it. So that was as simple as it got for me. I had some church stuff I was doing on the side, doing some giving, things like that. But yeah, $1,000, $1,000, and $1,000. That was my $3,000 a month plan. What that allowed me to do was in about 18 months, I had all my debt gone. I had $18,000, a little over 18, I think, in mutual funds and stocks and stuff like that. And then my wife came along. That's the one thing that wasn't in my equation. So if you're young, John, and you got a financial plan, make sure you figure in the wife. This is my advice. Figure in the wife and figure in the kids. I didn't have either one of those. So I didn't have a plan for the wife or the kids. But fortunately, when I met my wife, I had 18 grand. The problem was she had 20 grand in debt. So I had to start paying on her debt. Yeah, she wasn't debt free. And I had to start paying on her debt, but I started paying it while we were engaged, and that was okay. We've been married 24 years so far, so we're doing pretty good. And be 25 this year. Actually, we'll be 25 or 24 this year. Be 24 this year. We're 23 right now. We'll be 24.
Don't tell her that. You have to think about that. She might get upset.
She probably don't know. We're getting so used to, like 5 or 6 years ago, she'd get it right. Now she's starting to mess it up too, so it's okay.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the simple plan. And here's the thing. You don't have to have it all figured out. Your listeners, John, you don't have to have it all figured out. All you got to do is get moving in a good direction. And for me, that was a different direction than I was in. I wasn't a financial expert at 25. What I was a person who said, I don't want to live that way any longer. Let me live a different way. Let me learn something. Let me apply it. And now this is the direction I'm going. Now, if I could talk to my 25-year-old self, I would do a lot differently if I could go back, roll it back and start over. I had 2 or 3 houses along the way. I would have kept every one of them suckers, man. I would turn them into rentals, and I would have kept those rental properties, and I would have really close to, instead of the real estate I got now, I'd have probably another $1 million, maybe $1.5 million in real estate. So things that I would have done differently had I had the knowledge I have today. So, but you make the best decision you can with where you're at, and you move forward, and then your life can end up in a pretty incredible place. The way I say that is anything is possible when you make the right choices. And so the problem is a lot of people are making the wrong choices on a daily basis. They're choosing to spend all their money. They're choosing to go into debt, buying things that aren't useful, and they're not learning how to do anything different. So they're making a lot of bad choices. And so you have to stop making those bad choices and then start lining up good choices. And then once you stack up enough of those good choices over time, your life's going to look totally different, man. Everybody's life. If that's a simple principle. If somebody could just apply that one principle and go, you know what, when you look out 20 or 30 years, you go, my life sucks. Why is my life going to suck in 30 years? Well, it's because you're going to start making bad choices. You're going to keep making bad choices for 30 years. That's why your life's going to suck. So if you go, no, I don't want to make bad choices. Let me make good choices. What do I want my life to look like in 30 years? I want to have a little bit more money. I want to enjoy my life, be fulfilled. If I get married, I want to stay married, right? So there's choices you have to make to end up with that predetermined future. Now, I haven't said this yet, but I want your listeners to hear it. Most people don't have the ability to create their own vision for their future. And I think that's let me let that hang out there for a minute, because that is a very important thing I've learned in coaching people and dealing with people, is that most people are stuck on what I call the gerbil wheel, where they just keep going in circles, and going nowhere fast. So, and that's because they don't have a vision on where they want to be in the future. And without that vision, you can't point your energy in any kind of direction. So you have to have that vision to go, hey, I want to be in a different lifestyle in 10 or 15 years, which is what I did. I was fortunate that I'm a visionary. So when I was 25, I'm like, I'm broke. I don't want to be broke. I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 40. Here's how I'm going to do it. So once you get the vision, then you can start to put together the plan to accomplish the vision that you have. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to get you moving in that direction. And that's a key element. And anybody can do that, man. Anybody can do that.
Yeah, no, that's some amazing advice. And just from one of the big takeaways I got from that is that hamster wheel. A lot of the times we get to moving fast and we think we're moving somewhere, and we look back and we're still in the same place. We're jogging in place, right?
Yep.
A lot of the times, some of it I feel like is due to lack of guidance, and some of it's due to, of course, misinformation. Some of it is due to just the ignorance, not ignorance in a bad way, just ignorance in fact that they just don't know what they don't know kind of type of thing. And a lot of the times it's like, for me, and I kind of shared this earlier on before we hit press record, but like I was kind of running on that hamster wheel where it's like, I was trying to get into the real estate stuff and go to podcasts and go to the SMMA, and I was still at the restaurant and stuff like that. And it's like, there was nothing growing. Like, and for me, I find it funny because you met your wife and she was in debt. So I have a girlfriend. We've been together a little over 2 years now. And for me, she's been investing in me because I'm at a position right now. I'm in that early entrepreneur stage where it's like, I don't really have the most money, but I'm making things work. And like, so she's investing in me right now so that I can get it going and then in the future invest it back in us. So it's been quite the interesting dynamic, because for me, it's like, I wasn't a born entrepreneur. But once I got down to like kind of similar to you, I had that epiphany. Mine was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then from there, I kind of jumped down a rabbit hole. And one of the books that I love that I recommend to a while back in one of my earliest episodes, is a book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Because that book was probably the most practical book.
Yeah, is that Ramit Sethi? I think Ramit Sethi, maybe?
Yeah, Ramit Sethi. Yeah, I had to follow him, unfortunately, because he said like his views on real estate. He was like, oh, you should rent or whatever. And I was like, man. There's a lot of great advice that he has, but then in terms of like when it comes to owning real estate and stuff, I feel like you definitely should own it. Maybe not your primary residence, maybe just because like depending on what your lifestyle is like, you might enjoy a more, if you're like moving and traveling a lot, that makes perfect sense to rent. But like in terms of like owning real estate, like you should definitely have like some type of ownership in real estate or investment. I feel whether that's through syndications or through some type of Airbnb or whatever kind of rental property strategy it may be.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's always great to get involved in that area.
I think for me, when you talk about real estate, like when I first started learning about money, one of the first things I tried to do was go out and buy a house. And I tried to get my best friend to move in and be my first renter. I was like, let's go buy a 3-bedroom house. You come in and rent from me. He's like, no, I don't want to rent from you. I'll be a co-owner, but I don't want to rent. I'm like, screw you. I ain't moving then. Cause I had a great deal. I was paying $200 a month in rent to my mom and dad. I had a great ride. It was a great ride. So why would I move out? And so I was able to put away a lot of money. And I think that's a good advice. I think for somebody your age, John, getting started, getting out, if you can absorb the risk, it makes a lot of sense. Buy a 3-bedroom, move in a renter, let them, pay half your rent or half your house note. Or maybe you get lucky and you get 2 renters. You got 3-bedroom, put 2 renters in there and let them pay the whole house note. And then you could figure out what to do with the rest of it. Obviously, if you've got a girlfriend or you get married, that's a little bit different equation, especially when you start popping out kids. That's going to change the whole formula, but there's a lot to look at there. The one thing I would have done differently is because I was so anti-debt, is I actually paid my house off, my second house. I didn't pay my first house off. I paid my second house off within, I think it was 5 years. So if I could go back, I wouldn't have done that. I would have taken that money. And instead of paying the house off, I would have got a piece of rental property because my income was high enough that I could have afforded the risk. I could have accepted. It was acceptable amount of risk, but I was so anti-debt minded. And I think you got to look at the equation, right? I don't think it's a one size fits all. Some people say, take the risk. I've coached people who in 2008, 2009 housing crisis, they had 6 properties and lost them all because they didn't really grasp the risk factor that was applied. And so they got burned. And so that's something you got to be careful of.
Yeah, it's something that definitely, there's a lot of moving pieces that kind of go into it based on like how risk averse you are and what your current situation is. And I feel like a lot of times, and just with anything, when it comes to an opportunity, a lot of times people don't fully think it through, especially being younger. They kind of just see that, the squirrel and they kind of chase it and it ended up burning them in the long run. I kind of wanted to ask you, like along your journey, when you were starting off, like what were some of the things that you learned from that wasn't read, like from experience going on in your journey, like things you didn't pick up in a book, like you just had to just experience and go through it while you were on your personal financial awakening, kind of, I guess, to put it. What were some things that you kind of experienced and learned throughout there that wasn't in a book? Yeah,
I think one of the biggest ones, and I'm still learning this one, is you have to take your emotions out of your decisions. Like we're emotional creatures. And so you've heard of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or fear of missing out. And so those are emotional constructs that cause us to make bad decisions. And I've made one. I made a cryptocurrency trade just a couple of years ago, and I'm still hoping it's going to bounce back. I think it will. If Bitcoin hits $10,000 or $100,000, I'm going to make some money on my investment. I still got it. But if Bitcoin stays at 17,000, I'm losing my rear, man. I'm just like, I'm losing a ton of money. And so those are things that I think are important. You got to take your emotions out of it. So when I've been able to keep my emotions out of it and like have a plan and then execute my plan and go, this is what I said I was going to do. This is what I'm doing. I'm not going to let my emotions play a factor in this. Then I've made really good decisions. When I start feeling like I'm missing out on something, I'm chasing it or trying to make a rash decision, I would have been better off just kind of going, no. This is red flag. This is a red flag. I don't need no FOMO. I don't need no FUD. I just need to stick to the plan. And I missed that opportunity. That's fine. There's going to be another opportunity. I don't have to chase an opportunity. Sometimes opportunities come in the right time. Sometimes they come in the wrong time. And then that's when that fear of missing out comes because we feel like and you just have to call a spade. Go, you know what? I missed that one. That's okay. I'll catch the next one because that's the system, right? There's opportunities all around us. We just got to find them. I think the other thing that I would have done differently is because I grew up in a job family, like J.O.B., man. You get up, you go to work, you do the 40 hours, the 50 hours, the 60 hours, the 80 hours some week. That's what you do. And I'm just now in the last 5 or 6 years starting to plug into this entrepreneur mindset. And honestly, it takes a while. When you've been in the job world for so long and you want to shift, it takes a while to mentally reset. And so if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would have said, hey, go work your day job. And then at night, develop a new income stream. What can you do to develop a secondary or third level income stream, right? And then I would have spent the last 15, 20 years doing that, like going, hey, here's my job. Here's my secondary income stream. And the reason that's important is because in the job mindset, we all think that the party's never going to end, is how I say it, right? Like, hey, I'm always going to have a job. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to go to work. And the reality is it's just not true. Some days you're going to get hurt and you can't work and then you're done. Your boss is going to fire you. If you can't work, your boss is going to fire you. It's just the way it goes. He might get you some grace. You might get some medical leave for a little while, but if you're hurt in a car wreck or something else, you're done. Like you got to find something else to go do. If the business goes down, like 2008, all the housing crisis or what we're seeing right now, we're going into a recession. Some people say we're going into depression. I tend to lean towards depression. I also tend to lean towards it's all fabricated and created. Time for a different story there, but you have to be ready for that, right? So you need to be having a mindset. I need a secondary income stream. What is that I'm going to develop that's going to give me security for me and my family, regardless of if my job's in place or not there? And I could tell you, like right now, I'm learning how to create my own income as an entrepreneur, and it's hella fun, man. It is. It's fun, dude. Like when you figure it out and you learn the principles and you go, you know what? I can work a little bit longer today, a little bit harder, a little bit later, and I can find $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000. Like that's fun, man. That is really fun. Now it might take you a little while to figure that out, but I guarantee you, if you stick with it long enough, you're gonna figure it out. Like you're gonna get it figured out. Now I wish I had done that when I was in my corporate gig, and I'll tell you, I didn't. I made a lot of money in the corporate world, man. I didn't as a kid. I started out making $3.35 an hour, John. Can you imagine that?
Sheesh.
It ain't much, man. It ain't much. And I was always like, man, if I could just make $4, I could like my life would change. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. So I chased that dollar an hour to go up. But I never realized, because of the family I came from, that I never realized I could make $100,000 a year. The most money I think my mom ever made per year is maybe like 38 grand.
Really?
You know? Yeah. In her lifetime, she never made more than like about 38,000. So I'm with the money I made, I came from that mindset where I didn't realize I could make 6 figures. I didn't realize I could make 7 figures. But I did, and I was able to get there. But really what you should be thinking about if you're a real entrepreneur as you shift, now you don't start here, but eventually you can get there. You go, my income's unlimited, dude. Like it really is. Like, so once you touch that 7-figure number, you realize that there really is not an income barrier in the US currently. Now there are some people who are trying to undermine that and take that away, which was beyond the scope of your show today. But you want to learn more about that, all you got to do is read about the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. Go read up on that and you'll find out what the plans are. It ain't pretty, man. It's not pretty. And I advise everybody listening to your show to go look at that. But But I think those are the big ones, man. I would go back, look for opportunities all around you, look for secondary income streams, take your emotions out of your financial decisions, educate yourself enough to put together a good plan, do continual learning, always be learning something new every month, every 6 months, you're not going to start out as a financial expert, but if you hang out with financial experts, you will become a financial expert. Those are kind of the real estate. You're a real estate guy. If you're not going to be a real estate expert at the beginning, but if you hang out with real estate experts, you will become one over time. And real estate, I didn't really get big into real estate until about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. That's when I bought my first property. We wrote a $650,000 check, just said, we want that. Boom, bought it. And that's the biggest check I've written ever, is a $650,000 check. It's pretty wild. Bought the house outright. It's a brand new property down at the beach. And that was like other than my house, that was me getting into real estate. I wish I had gotten into real estate a lot sooner than that. I wish I had started on a lot smaller scale. That way I could learn a little bit. Now, we made good money on that property, but I could have bought a $150,000 property probably like 4 or 5 years before that.
Yeah.
And then I could have started small and learned a little bit and then gotten better and got better and got better. Just remember, where you start is the way I say it is, the first time you do something, it's the worst you're ever going to do, because you're doing it for the first time and you're only going to get better. But you got to do that first worst time before you can get to the better times. And that's a principle, is just don't be afraid to start something new and learn, and then give yourself some grace if you screw it up, right?
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. Just don't make fatal mistakes. Mistakes are okay. Fatal mistakes are not. So, and I used to think $100,000 or $150,000 was a lot of money. Some of you guys listening it's not. It's really not. It's not a lot of money. And in the scope of abundance, it's not a lot of money. So yeah, those are kind of the short list. I guess it's short or long list, however you look at it.
Now, you mentioned a ton of great points. I'll try to hit on everyone that I still remember, right? So work your 9 to 5 and then start your 7 to 10, and then work that 7 to 10 until it replaces your 9 to 5, right? And that's when you was talking about in the beginning about working at side hustle and figuring out ways. Like for me, I'm still at the restaurant and I'm only there enough to keep me afloat. Like, and I've been scraping by, trying to figure it out, but it's enough to keep me afloat so I can still keep on going all in and figuring out this world of entrepreneurship. And you mentioned that it's fun, right? This life that we live is a game. The game you're playing depends entirely especially as I feel like as a man, like it's like real life RPG game where you could like literally build out your character. You can upgrade your attributes and things like that. You could become the person you want to become literally in life by focusing and honing in on certain skills. And whether you want to max out your financial expertise, you could do that. Or you want to max out your physical prowess, you can start boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai or whatever fight style you want. You could decide which areas of your life you really want to hone in on and max out those attributes kind of. And like the entrepreneurship game, it's like, as I said, it's a game whether we realize it or not. And it's like the entrepreneur one is so much fun because you have so much control over the narrative and it's like a interactive game. Whereas if you work that traditional 9 to 5, the game is kind of already laid out for you. But like when the entrepreneurship world, it's so much more risk because it's so much more uncertain, but that's also the beauty of it at the same time. And then you mentioned things of the party never ends when you have a job. Everyone talks about getting a degree for that security, right? And then we get to times like what we're in now. And now it's like that degree that everyone was hoping for, that's going to save them. Like look at Twitter. They just laid off half of their employees from the time that we're recording this. All these other companies, Meta dropped like 11,000 not too long ago. These companies are dropping. And in the real estate space, Zillow dropped off like close to $250 million. They lost close to $250 million and they shut off close to 25% of their company because they tried to do the iBuying route. So that whole entire department got wiped out. It's like when things get tough, a lot of these people that went the secure 9 to 5 stable, I got a degree job like route, like those people are out the water. And now that AI is coming into play, like a lot of these other people, they're going to start getting wiped out as well. So if you're not in front of this curve, you're not ahead of the ball game. And I love that the fact that you mentioned the Great Reset. And it's been quite some time since I read up on this. It's been a while. So I need to touch back on it. And I'm glad that you kind of reminded me because I've been keeping up with some of this stuff in the background that's going on. And it's like, it's kind of scary where we're headed and what they have planned. But as I said, with the entrepreneurship route, none of that stuff affects you for the most part, really. And like once you have full control of your life, and you mentioned like 150,000 is not that much money. I get around some of these people and you would mention 150,000. It's like, why are you thinking so small? Like, these are the type of people, and it kind of all circles back to what we started in the conversation with when you originally mentioned mastermind. That's the beauty of it. Cause I know like a bunch of real estate agents that are making 7 figures. And like, for me, I don't want to do real estate anymore. My main focus right now is podcasting, but it's like, I'm going to get back into it once my income gets back up to get back into the investing side of it. But it's like, when I talk to some of these top agents, it's like they're making 7 figures. Some of these agents have some crazy net worth goals. And I remember, like, for me, I thought like $1 million was a lot. Then I kind of boosted it up a little bit. I was like a couple million, maybe 10. Then my goal I said was like, I want to have a $30 million net worth. And then I still remember I was on this morning call one time, and a couple of the team leaders that kind of run the Keller Williams office that I'm here at in my city, they came back from like a wealth building workshop. And in order to attend, you had to create a plan to 50 million. And so you didn't have to have 50 million, but you have to have a plan to get there. And so it's like they were sharing some of the things that they learned. And I was just like, 50 M's, that's like crazy.
It's doable though.
It is. And it's like, they probably got there and heard people trying to make $100 million plan, like Alex Ramosi. That's someone who I've been following up about with recently. And it's like, he's trying to work up to get to $1 billion. It's like, no matter, it's like a never ending mountain, but just like enjoying the never ending pursuit is kind of like enjoying the process and being able to take it in, be present in the moment, or realizing that you can never stop. And not because like you're not satisfied, but because we're not fulfilled when we're stagnant, when we're complacent. It's like we're always something to work towards, and it's always another goal. So it's really fun and I'm still in the beginning stages of it. So it's like I haven't still figured out the way in terms of income wise to really get off the ground. But it's like right now for me, I know that the most valuable currency is attention, right? So it's like focusing, going all in on building this audience of people that genuinely support and love what I got going on. Because as I develop, I've been reading up on upsells, downsells, how to offers, call to action, all that stuff, click funnel building, all that stuff. So it's like when the offer presents itself, and that'll come obviously from my audience, right? Building what they need. And it's like, I'm ready for it. It's just like more focused on the attention. So it's fun navigating this world. And I'm about to join a mastermind too from the time we're recording this. So it's like the opportunities present themselves. And you mentioned that opportunities everywhere. And the only reason we don't see opportunities from what I've learned and read is because we don't know enough. Because something like now, a lot of people are panicking, but then there's people like you who see the opportunities in it all and know where to invest, where to put their money, not because, you're better or worse than me or someone else listening. You just got more knowledge of the game. You're better at the game than I am right now. And then some of the people listening. So it's like, and not saying that, oh, you're bad, but enjoying that, right? Because that means I can get better at this game too and figure out what the opportunities are. So you definitely mentioned a lot of great points there and a lot of things that made me really think about like me and my journey so far. I kind of wanted to ask you, right, for anyone like that's listening right now, and it's like a lot of these things kind of flew over their head a little bit in terms of like this game. It's like, oh my goodness, they're talking about so many things. What would you say for that person? Because you mentioned it's hard to reset from that mindset of an employee to an entrepreneur. I think that might be something I want to dig a little deeper on. What would you say is the biggest thing that helped you make that reset, helped you make that shift? Because a lot of the times in the entrepreneurship world, we tend to become employees to the own business that we started to set ourselves free, and we trap ourselves within our own business. So like how were you able to break free from that employee mindset so that you could start prospering with your entrepreneurial endeavors?
Yeah. And let me say this. I never planned on going and having my own personal finance book, my own show, my own event series. Like I never planned on doing any of that. And I have been trapped in that, and I'm 52 this year. So once you're stuck in a model, like a job model, it's harder. So you're younger, so you're already shifted. And so you won't have that baggage. Now I picked up some good things from that. So I learned how to run a business. I learned how to operating systems. I know how to hire people. So I performed at a very high level in the corporate structure, but the entrepreneur mindset is very different. And that says like, if you don't go out and make some money today, you won't have no money tonight, and tomorrow you won't have any food. So that's that mindset. So my thing that I've learned more recently, and I've been really living off investment money, man. So through my entrepreneur's journey, if I could go back just 5 years, I would tell myself I would say, self, get out of bed. What are you selling today? And I'm a builder. So I think there are different types of entrepreneurs. I am a builder. I build systems. I build visions. I build strategies. I build products. I build things. I'm not a sales I can sell, but I'm not a sales minded first entrepreneur. So I would look at myself and say, get out of bed, figure out what you're going to sell today, go sell it. How are you going to sell it? What are you selling? How are you going to sell it? And so I told my son, he worked with me for a little bit, and I told him, I said, hey, we got to be answering 2 questions every day. What do we need to do? And how are we going to make money? And so when you start to make the shift to an entrepreneur, and I would say this for anybody, right? If you can start asking yourself that question, even if you have a job, you go, how am I going to make money? If you got a job, then you go, how am I going to make more money? So if your job pays you $50,000 a year, how are you going to make another $50,000 on top of that $50,000 this year so that you make $100,000? Because that's the question that really successful people kind of ask. Their minds are wired. It's not that they're greedy. It's not that they're chasing money. It's not that they're like money, it's the way of life. It's just like we breathe air, they breathe money. Like entrepreneurs breathe money, and they make it because their minds are just always working on that problem. It doesn't mean they're greedy. They're not consumed. They're not evil. Now, there are some evil money people. Don't get me wrong. There's some very evil money people, and we won't go down that road, but just trust me, they exist. And they're doing a lot of shady crap. There's a lot of good ones too. And so don't let money scare you. You just have to figure out like, hey, what's my character like, right? So Dave Ramsey says this a lot. Money is not an evil thing. It just makes you more of what you really are. So if you're a jerk, you're going to be a bigger jerk.
Yeah.
If you're a trashy person, you're going to be trashier. Like money is just going to empower you to do more of whatever that vice is. If you got a propensity to alcoholism, money's going to just make that worse for you. If you got a propensity towards drugs, money's just going to make that worse for you. If you're a hardcore womanizer, that's going to be really bad. And all 3 of those things are going to destroy your future. You might see some success on a mild level, but before you get to be truly like really successful, those things are going to really come crashing down on you at some point and trash out all your work that you put all your effort into. So you really want to make sure you got your character straight. The way I say it is you can't build or keep wealth if you don't have strong character. So you have to worry about that character because it's a linchpin piece for you in your planning and finances. But I think that answers your question, John, and how that works. Like I said before, you have to have a journey or a mindset of getting money smart and starting on that. So everybody starts in the same place. I tell people that Warren Buffett did not come out of the womb with a gold brick in his hand and a stock trading calculator. He didn't do it. He had to come out just like all of us. We all came out the same way with no clothes on, screaming and nasty. And then somewhere along the line, we got money smart. Some people that happened sooner. My friend Jeremy, it started at age 6. For me, it started at age 25. Everybody starts at different levels, but they all start at the same place. They have to go through the same process of learning how money works, learning how to make, manage, and multiply it. And then some people are good. Some people are better at it, but everybody kind of has to go through that same process. Now, something like 75 to 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Why does that mean people living paycheck to paycheck? Because I'm going to tell you, I'm no different than I was. It's just me, 25, I'm broke. 26, I don't have a broke mindset anymore. I'm getting money smart. I'm moving. That's the same story for everybody I talk to. It's the same journey. It's repeatable. It's a repeatable journey. Anybody can do it. I've talked to people who were strung out on drugs, people been in prison, people, you name it, people been in Chinese concentration camps with nothing, and they end up all becoming millionaires. So there is really no limit.
Yeah, it reminds me of Jim Rohn. It's not about making $1 million. It's about the person you become on your way to making $1 million. And for anyone that's listening, definitely go check out Jim Rohn because he has a very similar story where I think at 25, he came across his mentor, and that's when his life changed, and he was able to, I think by age 30, become a millionaire. And the first 5 years, he says, it's like, it was pretty much broke, paycheck to paycheck, wasn't making no money. 25, met the mentor, had the shift, had the epiphany. And by age 30, he was getting to it. He had $1 million and everything started working out to his favor. But it took that, having that epiphany, it took that mental shift. And Tony, you mentioned a ton of amazing points from just the lessons you learned in your upbringing to like little things like the Great Reset that most people probably never heard of in their life. But everyone should definitely go read up on that. I'm going to go read up on that too myself because it's been quite some time. And where can we connect with you? Where can we find you at? If we want to learn more about what you got going on and, just connect with you?
Yeah. So the Millionaire Choice is my main financial website. If you go on the Millionaire Choice, there's some free resources, free downloads. You can get my book. You can get another book I wrote called Creating Millionaire Families, because that's part of it, right? Teaching your kids. Once you learn how to do it, teach your kids how to do it, change your family for generations to come. I do a free financial coaching session. I call it Millionaire Planning. So I believe that if I talk to somebody for one, it can totally transform their lives. So you can book a free appointment with me online. I don't know why more people don't take advantage of that. I guess they think I'm going to upsell them or something. The reality is most of the people I talk to, they're not ready for my coaching long term, but I give this hour away every day. I set aside an hour to talk to people if they want to talk to me. So I just encourage people to do that. TonyBradshaw.com is my main personality site. There's a lot of stuff on there. If you're a business owner, just stop by there. I've got a great mastermind for business guys if somebody wants to plug into that. And yeah, man, just trying to make the world a better place, have an impact. But those are the places, themillionairechoice.com and TonyBradshaw.com.
Amazing. And now it's time for still thinking of a name for this, but our final round, our flash fire round that we had in every podcast episode with. Without further ado, I'll get right into it. Question number 1 is, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Ooh, man, focus on your marriage. If you're going to get married and commit to a woman, you better figure out how to do it right. Yeah. I almost blew up my marriage, and luckily I hung in there and fixed it, but it took a lot of work, and start working on it sooner than later.
Amazing. What is the most admirable trait that a person can have?
I think empathy with other people. I've learned to have a lot of grace for people because I needed some grace at one point, and that really helped me just kind of realize that if somebody's treating you bad or having a bad day, you don't really know what's going on in their life. And so you just need to be more understanding of people in general.
If you had to change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
That's got to be the Bible, man. I would just throw that down at somebody. I mean, it's the number one selling book of all time. There's a reason for that. There's so many good principles in there. It's kept my life on the right path and done that. Number 2, though, let's do a number 2. Is there a number 2? Probably let's go with Atomic Habits, because I think our life is built on habits. And you need to have a good set of habits. So if your life's on the wrong track, you got to look at your habits. You got bad habits, man. So get rid of the bad habits, reinforce with the good habits. And if you stack up a lot of good habits, you're going to end up in a really good place. That's Atomic Habits.
What is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
I am trying to create, I'm glad you asked that one, John. I am trying to create a financial transformation system for cities. So when I look at personal finance and who I am and what I want to leave as a legacy, that's what I want to do. I want to put a millionaire plan in everybody's hands in my hometown, Nashville. But once I do that, with all the systems in place, I want to be able to replicate that across the country and across the world. And so that's what I'm hyper focused on right now. It's like, what does that system look like where the day a child is born, that they have a birthright to be wealthy from the day they're born? What does that system look like where everybody grows up knowing that there's a predestined path for them of wealth and abundance? And I think we can build that system. And that's my life's mission right now.
Amazing. And to finish off, no matter where someone is in their journey right now, what is the first step they could take to embark on their walk to wealth?
It's got to be finding somebody going in the same direction. I don't care if you're starting out or you're well down the path. Sometimes we hang on to old relationships too long that hold us back and drag us down. And some of those relationships, you just got to cut loose. It's just the way it is. Loyalty sometimes can hold you back. And there's a place for those relationships and you have to manage those. But you really have to get yourself around people who are going the places that you want to go, that can help you reach those goals, whatever those goals are, and even help you identify goals that you don't even know exist or possibilities that don't know exist. So you got to look for those groups and those people for that. And they are all around you.
Yeah, amazing. It's all about being loyal to your future self, right? The you that has all the dreams accomplished, all the money, all the abundance, all the everything. Are you more loyal to him or to what others see of you? And so, Tony, I think this was an amazing interview. I think, honestly, with all the things that we cover, we definitely have a ton of nuggets that we could take away. Hopefully people are taking notes. This is definitely not the episode you just want to play in the back of your head during the gym. You want to write some of this stuff down because you mentioned a lot of good nuggets. Thanks again for hopping on the show. Thanks again for just having this conversation with me and just sharing some of the things you learned throughout your journey, your experience.
Awesome, John. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to catching up with you soon.